Oh, thank you, sir. Kind sir. Terry Brown here. Welcome you all. It's our 32nd year, not counting this past shutdown year of 2020 and 31st. And I'm sure glad to see you all showed up and you came here. And I'd like to give some thanks and acknowledgments and run down maybe a little bit of the background of the history of why we're here and these events, and a little bit of my own history, and the history of the drug war against marijuana, and perhaps a little bit about the miraculous healing properties and powers of the sacred herb. And we got we got a show on, and we're going to go the whole weekend, and may God bless. And thank you, Jodi, and for leading me up here. And I'm a little bit worried about the COVID and all because of acting my age. Might include something I wouldn't want to have to deal with, and that's the way that goes. Well, I'd like to run down some credits for what made this event possible. This 31st Harvest Fest Cannabis Ganja Grail. Let's hear it for Ganja Grail. All right here. And thank you, Jodi, for ushering me, for being my escort up here. And Jodi and me, COVID-wise, we're bubbled because Jodi's a member, literally a member of the community. Her and young Casey, they live up on the hill here in the trailer, and it's really something.
She looks beautiful.
We got and before we do too much of that, we got our 420 little gig to do here, which is a little bit of an inhalant of the precious God-given seed-bearing herb. Thank you, Jodi. Oh, forgive me. That's the first dope smoking I've done since I think the last time I was up on stage here. Just because I'm just a little bit past my years. I'm up here this afternoon to say hi and welcome to everybody and open up the show. And I'd like to go into a little bit of the background of these events and why we're here and our celebration of music and community and sacred herb and perhaps a little bit of the miraculous healing properties of the herb. And thank you, Jodi. I can't inhale, not too much, but I can fake it here. When I started, and speaking of, I was a smoker. I was a stoner before a stoner was a stoner. Before it was cool, and I can't resist just a little bit. There's a little bit of my own history dates back to my earliest experimentation with the sacred herb was experimenting with it in Brooklyn, New York, in college, in the year '67, the year of the Summer of Love, and it was only and back then you didn't just get something passed to you. You had to you had to plan on it. You had to meet with people. You had to wait. You had to conspire. You had to wait some longer. You had to muster up some money. The price of an ounce of weed or grass. Price of an ounce of grass was $15, but nobody had an ounce. Nobody. You couldn't. You'd have to go to Mexico to find an ounce of grass. It wasn't there. And the first time I smoked it was a very special occasion in the fall of 1968. I was being young and impressionable, not knowing any better. And it wasn't long after that, in that same year, or in the following year of 68, and I was at college in University of Hartford, and I run afoul of the law. And it was not taken lightly back in those days, and it put a hurting on my life, and I could have got thrown out of school, and since then the drug war has gotten the U.S. state-sponsored war on some drugs unwinnable, unstoppable, freedom driving and stealing, and reputation destroying war on some drugs has got to end, and it has destroyed too many lives and too many lives and too much property, and gone are the days, and hopefully forever, of unwarranted U.S. government choppers flying over your house with infrared cameras, seeking the indoor sunshine of you growing indoor, having an indoor reefer grow room, and then coming in and raiding you, and in front of your wife and your children and your family, and instituting civil forfeiture on your land and your house and your property, and destroying your reputation, maybe forever. And so it was in the 1960s and the 70s, and on until even until this present day and worldwide. And Maine, however, Maine is considered and to be considered a progressive leader in the reform of America's war on some drug. And let's hear it for Maine. Maine is where it's at, man. Damn it, what's the Maine, the way life should be? And I am not so young, but I remember the days of the Red Scare and Senator Eugene McCarthy and the fight against communists, and everybody was a communist, and they got more powerful, and they traded money for power and power for money, and influence for power and money, and lives were destroyed and falsely accused, rights were violated, people's profile and their fame and their talents were defiled and wrongly run down in the case of Hollywood stars, and even people in public schools, any sort of public figure, and in most cases their destroyed reputation stayed destroyed, because that was the kind of country we live in. And today the situation looks a little bit sketchy as well, and that's why we're here.
She's like, we're running away.
We're in front of the cameras. Assholes.
And part of the reason I'm here today, and yet on above ground and fucking wind is the use of medical marijuana in my daily life, every 12 hours, and that is more specifically is the one of the isotopes of the weed, the CBD. Don't ask me to spell that. And the CBD, it livens me up a little bit. They say it doesn't make you high, but for me, it helps me to wake up. It helps me to go to sleep. It helps me to eat. It helps me to breathe. It helps me to concentrate. And it helps me to stay alive and to enjoy it. And if you'll excuse me for a moment, yeah. Okay, well, let's see. I got a list of credits here, and it's bands and individuals And let's begin with for the Ganja Grail credits. We have Mrs. Brown, Cindy Brown, my wife, Jodi Stebbins, who's been right in there. These people from the very beginning, from the earliest years. Dr. Casey O'Connor, soon to be married to Jodi, and he is the leader and the director and sustainer of these events for a good few years now. And for all these people, these events, they would never happen. They would not take place. Josh French, who has been Josh French, he's been living here for over a year now, and cue me up here if I should leave out anything. And he's been a great and consistent help, and live arts director, and he found himself a new life, and he is as a adopted dad, and he's going to pursue that life. And I can't help but remind me of, in my own history, the many different communes, communities, collectives, groups where I have lived and crashed out and passed out and lived there and associated there, where I came from nowhere relative to there, and then I left, and I never saw those people again, but it changed my life. And just a few more here. Josh French, Carmela, Micah, Iggy. Iggy does the sound and the lights, especially the lights, which are just unbelievable. Hey, you want psychedelic? Hey. Tiger Mike, Michelle, Christy, Encore, Entertainment. Oh, I can read. Art Life Studio, Tommy, Charms Little Charms, Carms Little Charms, Falcon Eye, Christian, McNabb, Craig Stanley, Unique, Creations, Infinite Expanse Arts, Foodies Without Borders, Mrs. Munchies, get that right, Juicy J's Lemonade, Sixth Lodge, Ed's Famous Grilled Cheese, Martin Woods Farm, our neighbors across the road, just down the road a little ways. And be sure to check out Sarah has her, as far as I know, her food vending booth here this weekend. I think it might be over to my right there, a little bit higher up, and never had better than their farm-raised organic corn grain-fed country sausage from their country-raised hogs over there. And let us not forget that we are here to celebrate peace, and that peace is your nature. Do not disturb it. And just too much. I got a few thoughts here to bring up to you. And yeah, just for a moment. And here I have just a note from the Unchanging Scriptures, except for they did change it from the King James version, the one I grew up to, which was good enough for me. And lest we forget, the King James version of the Bible is a translation of the Holy Scriptures, and now they got it more into plain English, and I'm not sure that agrees with me. And some of this passage I know to my right here, but I wanted to today I wanted to include some of it that is equally important. And this And this quotation from the New Testament of the Holy Scriptures is from the book of Genesis. Genesis 2, verse 27.
We got some orders for you, my friend.
And this won't take too long. So God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And God blessed them. And God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every herb bearing seed, which is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree in which is the fruit of a tree yielding seed. To you it shall be for meat, and to every fowl of the air, and every fish of the sea, and unto every creeping creature upon the face of all the earth, wherein there is life, I have given every green herb for meat. And it was so. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And the evening and the morning were the sixth day. And from later in the Old Testament, it says, it is right and comely that a man eat and drink, enjoy the fruit of the labors he taketh all the days of his life that God giveth him, for it is his portion. And there's more, but if you could kindly wait just a moment. Ooh, stoners, seed bearing herb, and the And I was doing some research only this morning, and I come across the word, like a new word that I've known for a half a century now, that was new to me then, paraquat. You know, raise your hand, you all out there, if you know what paraquat is. And this was a baddie from brought on in the war on the U.S. state-sponsored, unwinnable, unending, eternal war on some drug by President Richard Nixon. And paraquat, described in the dictionary as a crystalline, four-sided, four-screwed-up fuck molecule with the little hydrogen things on one end of it and all that. But to me, it means more than that. Paraquat was a U.S. invented herbicide that was purposely sprayed on the fields of Mexico to poison the Mexican pot crop that was grown to be exported to this country and enjoyed by the American consumers of marijuana, whether it was from relief of stress or avoiding cancer or just feeling better. And there was fear in the land, and it was the days of invasiveness and civil forfeiture and needless destroying of reputations and incarceration. And I am a survivor of the U.S. war on some drugs, and we can be thankful that we are all here today. And there's a long history to it. And paraquat, that was it, and it didn't end there. And there was same like the earlier Red Scare. Many reputations were destroyed, and they didn't. And those people, they never recovered. And I come from the generation. I'd like to just go back a little bit. I come from the baby boomer generation, and it was said back in those days, so far long ago, that the whole world is watching. And when we said, and we knew that we suffered an identity crisis. Indeed, we did in those days, because things were changing so fast. Because when we were growing up in the 1950s, it was a black and white world. It was a different world when we were little. There was no suburbs. There was no suburban sprawl. There was no color TV. There wasn't even FM radio. There was no transistor radios. You couldn't even carry a radio around here, around somewhere. There was no transistor radios. There was no long playing records. you only had 78s, and 45s they come in quite a long ways after that. And we come a long ways. We're past it. We're past a lot of that.
Good.
And it was in the days of the hippies and the hip, and Jane Fonda and the Beatles and Janis Joplin.
I will.
And some of these people, I'll never forget them. And some of them, they're still alive today. And Paul McCartney and John Lennon, one of the greatest, the government was offering a reward for dropping the charges against the person that was convicted of murdering John Lennon. And it was John Lennon, the activist and the leader of the Beatles, who went to Ann Arbor, Michigan, to a political rally there, and he defended John Sinclair, an American who was Minister of Self-Defense and Minister of Information in the U.S. White Panther Party, and of peace and freedom and self-defense. And it was through his efforts that John Sinclair, who was earlier at that very rally, he was busted for possession of 2 joints with intent to smoke and not to bother anybody about him or traffic in it or nothing. And he was sentenced to 5 years in incarceration not for bothering nobody. And it was from the efforts and the profiling and the speaking of Paul McCarthy that he was freed the next day by order of the judge. And and hemp fiber, which is nature's longest, strongest, most flame retardant, chemical free, desirable, and free of slavery fabric in the whole world. And medical marijuana is not to be forgotten. Medical marijuana is the most safe, effective, free medication that there is, and it's no longer such a secret after decades of research how marijuana, like blueprints, and directly affects the cellular metabolism and cures cancer, and even better yet, it prevents many topical, degenerative, and fatal disorders of the various processes of the body. You have, thank you, Jodi.
Water!
Thank you, Jodi. Water. Water, nature's most important nutrient, a gift from the water planet called Earth. May there be peace on the water planet towards people of goodwill. Amen.
Amen.
And let us not think that the war on some drugs is over, and let us not give up. Like that's literally what happened in California, the first state to decriminalize simple possession in around 1974, when the pot war still had 20 years more of intensifying, and so many of the activists, they just quit it and figured somebody else would do it, and they didn't. And but we have not given up, and perseverance furthers. And the revolution will not be televised. And this is now, this is dealing with the, you might say, the identity crisis of our history of the living in America in the 1960s and 70s. But at the same time, we said and we knew that the revolution will not be televised. But we also knew the whole world is watching, and it was. and piss tests and drug testing hadn't even been invented yet. In the days when I first got busted with a brick of pot in my self-earned and paid for VW microbus on the streets of a seedy little greedy New York factory town in the fall of 1968, and why those were in the days when a town had a main street and it had a mill and it had a railroad and a railroad station that went through it and it had a water tower, and the war on drugs was a new thing. And when they said to me, are you really with all these hippies in the back of your bus and carving a brick of pot in the city, which from Connecticut everybody knew the city could mean only one thing, New York City, and the only thing I could say was the truth. Yep. And you should have seen the officer and his flashlight and the face on him drop because he couldn't believe it that I was part of these trendy, fashionable hippies and caught up in the sway of the whole thing, and I was too clean cut. Thank you, Jodi. And I was I was a 9-year jock. I was varsity playing at sports, and back in those days we called ourselves jocks. We'd say, what kind of athletic supporter are you? And by the Jesus, and that was my story. Let me tell you a little story about this. This was my Hempstock story. I was in college and I couldn't go. I didn't make it. That's the short story. I didn't make it to Woodstock. I was only across the line in Connecticut, and about 10 miles from the New York state line, where the drinking age was 18, and in Connecticut, the drinking age was 21. And of course, you drive that few miles of windy county roads from the Squan's Pond to New York State, and they had no limit to the number of roadhouses and bars and saloons in here and there and everywhere. And because it wasn't, believe me, the times they are changing, and the times they aren't like it is today with facial recognition and computer chips everywhere in sight and right behind you watching. And we're gonna have a great show tonight. And we're gonna get on with the show here, right off here. But before we do that, I got a couple more notes I'd like you to read up on and for you and to offer for you. Now listen up. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the benefits of medical marijuana. And how it's and this really shouldn't take too long to wrap this up. It's been practiced for 10, 15, 20,000 years, or as old as history can record, and there's hardly a temporal, chronic, or fatal disorder of all the systems of the human body that can't be helped by the use of medical marijuana. And it has no real impact of what your intentions were. You could have been smoking it with the intention of getting high, but it will still prevent and cure cancer. And that is one of the most curious things about the law today, and always has been, that the intention is every part of the law. Like say, if you borrow some money from, if you were accused of stealing some money from somebody, but you could prove in court, no, you didn't steal the money, you only intended to borrow it. Or if you killed somebody, or your actions resulted in the death of somebody, and if you could prove in court that, well, I didn't intend to kill him, I just intended to assault him, well, then you were clear of the more serious charge of murder. Thank you, Jodi. And that's the science to it, and and a great part, one of the most marvelous parts about the consuming of medical marijuana is how it changes your breath and it relaxes your breath, and it brings, and it's right parallel to, and it brings to mind the practice of yoga. the science of self-realization. Yoga meaning union. And yoga is something like being a practicing Christian. Is something that you are already doing. And how the marijuana molecule of both the THC and the CBD are all but identical to the endocannabinoids in your body, produced primarily by your skin. The endo meaning within, the very closely connected and resembling to molecule to the marijuana THC molecule itself, and especially the CBD. And just because the world is not flat, doesn't mean people fall off every hour of the minute of the day. And it has everything to do with the human weakness of greediness and power and materialism and the persecution of unpopular minorities for unwholesome preoccupations and gratifications, and sometimes they call it the Galileo-Eisen. For if you read your history, you perhaps you are aware that Galileo, who discovered in early science as a Renaissance man that the Earth is not flat, and he had to testify that no, he was all wrong about that. It was either that or he was going to lose his head. And all right then. Thank you, Jodi, and I'd like to, and happy 420, and you all out there, and excuse me for just a moment while I get high. Oh, thank you, Jodi. And we come a long way since the pot. It was called grass, and it all came from Mexico. It didn't even come from anywhere except Mexico. It was $15 an ounce if you could find some. It wasn't until a year or two later that they had some from exotic places, like when the Acapulco gold came out. A year or two later, and the price went up to $25 an ounce, and hardly anybody had $25 an ounce. The minimum wage in the job market, for which I'd done my deal with that. The minimum wage was $1.25 an hour, $1.25 an hour. And so for a 40-hour week, your take-home pay was how much? $42.50 for working a 40-hour week. But yet in those days, you could buy a damn good running car for $50, and it was unleaded. It was leaded or unleaded, and that's as far as it went. And there was no environmental crisis. There was no environmental anything. It was called, if you wanted to get involved in the dealings of that, it was called conservation. And the earliest inkling of it was the coming of the book Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. And this was in the early 1960s, the 1960s. And I remember that. I remember the fear of the gypsy moth and the stripping naked of the native oak trees in my native Connecticut. And I don't remember much about it, but I'll never forget it. And so I want to thank you all for coming. And we got quite a hell-raising bunch of bands coming up here, and carry on, y'all.
Let's hear it for Harry Brown. I mean, that was good, but y'all can do better. He risked COVID to be here, guys. Give him some energy. Never. Always forward, never straight.
Getting straight, I say. Jodi and I, we needn't worry about COVID. We are bubbled. We have remained on the hill as part of the same community here, and for over 2 weeks, sharing company. So we have no fear of communicating the COVID between us.
Bubble.
We have bubbles.
All right, folks, I'm just going to go over a little bit of housekeeping on my way off the stage here. As always and forever, and with absolutely no exceptions, I don't care if you're a band, I don't care if I'm your boss, and I don't care if you're a vendor, no pills, no powders, no gases. Rule number 2, consent. Get it, continue to get it. There are no excuses. Ask before you grasp. Recognize that an unconscious or intoxicated person is not capable of giving you consent, even if they mutter or say yes. So declare your intentions early and often.
Consent is sexy.
Container fires only. Parking in the field, camping in the woods. Be kind, be free, be loving, respect each other, and hydrate.
Water! Let's give it up for God, Jodi herself, and Harry Brown, the man, the myth, the legend. Let's give it up for him. All right, so hey gang, it is just getting around that time. The fire safety meeting should be right under the art tent if you want to spin some flames. That's where you gotta be. You cannot spin fire if you're not at the safety meeting. Then you can also do the safety dance while you're at the safety meeting, because why wouldn't you? So, Tiger Mike here. Can you find Tiger Mike? Do you know where Tiger Mike is? Oh, Tiger Mike's over here at the Towhee Tea Hut. Don't be distracted by the Papa Joe on the stage reenacting the Tiger Mike. That's just a distraction. I'm over here at the Towhee Tea Hut drinking some cocoa chai, chocolate chai, and it is delicious. So if you want to get yourself a delicious cup of tea, they have plenty of options over here. And there's a FestaQuest. The person who gives the most tea to others is the Tea Fairy, and they get themselves their own catered tea party. And then you get to say, what a lovely tea party. And who doesn't want to say that like every day of their lives? So come on over to the Towhee Tea Hut. They got delicious tea, a whole bunch of extras, $5 a cup, and you can also add some wonderful things like they got raw cow's milk, they got honey, they got all sorts of, they got rosemary and chaga shot. Yeah, you know you want that chaga. All right, another quick announcement. We got Miss Sally's Bake Off. Right up, I believe it's a blue easy up, kind of in the middle, maybe around like, let's say like noon and a half, if the vending circle were a clock and